New Year's Eve, at about 10 o'clock, I was sitting in my favorite chair by the stove, thinking I might as well go to bed. I could let younger people blow horns and pound dishpans to celebrate the arrival of the new year. Suddenly, a scratching sounded outside. The kitchen door caught my attention. Could it be? It was Roxy. She scampered into the room as soon as I opened the door. Roxy! I exclaimed. You came to help me welcome in the new year, didn't you? I'm so happy to see you. Where have you been the past 7 weeks? She didn't answer my questions, but she looked at me as if to say, You know what I want? Why don't you get my dinner ready? While I mix up the usual bowl of bread and eggnog, Roxy sniffed about the kitchen to make sure that everything was still in proper order since the last time she had been our guest. Her appetite satisfied by the meal I had prepared, Roxy waddled over to where I was sitting and stretched out on the floor beside my chair. I reached down and ran my fingers through her thick fur, scratching her back from head to tail. For about an hour we sat there. I let my mind go over the good times we had together. Of course, I didn't know what Roxy thought about, but at least she seemed to enjoy this New Year's Eve party. Finally, I decided that the party had lasted long enough. Although it was not yet midnight, I put Roxy out into the cold night and went to bed. Roxy came again the next 2 nights at about the same time and for the same kind of treatment. I wondered which really brought her back, the food or the fondling. Knowing quite a bit about raccoons, I believed the food was more important to her than the back rub. About the 1st of February, an extra early spring thaw came, with daytime temperatures up to 45 degrees Fahrenheit. The air felt almost balmy. One night at about 7:30, I went out to feed the cattle. After I'd finished putting out hay for the cows and the calves, which were in separate corrals, I turned to the stack of baled hay to pitch to pick up my crutch. Out of the darkness, Roxy came waddling up to me. I laid down my crutch and sat down on a bale of hay. Roxy lost no time climbing up to my lap. She went right to work, reaching her delicate forepaws into my jacket pockets to search for peanuts, which I usually carried for just such an emergency meal. Soon she devoured all I had. I knew she would soon rip my pockets apart to look for more, so I stood up, dumping her off my lap. Jumping from one bale to another to the top of the stack, she turned and looked at me with an expression that seemed to say, Is that any way to treat a friend? Come on up to the house, Roxy, I said, and I'll give you some bread and milk. Whether she didn't understand or wasn't hungry, I don't know. In any case, she disappeared into the darkness. But as I closed the corral gate, she was right beside me. Then again she slipped into the darkness beyond the circle of light from the corral. I kept calling, Roxy, as I walked across the second corral, but there was no sign of the little lady. Passing through the gate on the other side of the corral, I turned to fasten it, and there at my feet Roxy seemed to materialize out of the darkness. She followed close at my heels all the way to the house. As any cordial host would do, Kulak came bounding toward us to welcome home his old friend. But Roxy was not sure what he was going to do, so she insistently vanished again in the darkness. Kulak, you big nuisance, I exclaimed. Why did you scare away our timid little friend? I took him by the collar and led him to his doghouse. I'll fix you, old boy. I'll tie you up so you can't scare away a special guest like Roxy. I hope she will come back, now that she knows you can't hurt her. I snapped the chain on his collar and walked back toward the house, calling softly, Roxy, it's safe to come now. Come on, Roxy. I looked down to place my foot on the porch step, and there was Roxy with her front feet on the step, too. As soon as I opened the kitchen door, she scooted inside. She seemed to know that she would be safe and that there would be food there. Soon she was lifting pieces of milk soaked bread from her bowl, while I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, watching her. When she had eaten her fill, she came over to me, stood up on her hind legs, and stuck her cold nose against my cheek and then into my ear. Then she adjusted my glasses and combed my hair with her long fingers. I guess she decided that I was in good enough shape, and off she ran for a tour of the kitchen. In a short time she was back at my side, but this time she lay down on the floor. I started to stroke her back, and slowly her hind legs straightened out behind her, her body lying flat on the cool linoleum. I ran my fingers through her thick pelt, trying to reach her skin. I picked up one fold after another between my thumb and fingers to find out how much fat she still had stored there. The layer of fat had very nearly been used up to keep her body warm during the long winter fast, but she was still in a good, healthy condition. Roxy apparently liked this kind of massage because she stretched out her head with her chin on the floor and closed her eyes for a short nap, but only for about a minute. Then those sparkling black eyes popped open again and she waddled over to her bowl to finish her meal. Her restless nature and her curiosity sent her around the kitchen for another inspection tour and then back to me for another back rub. So passed an hour and a half. Then I decided I had other things to do. I didn't want Roxy to feel that she had worn out her welcome, so I opened the door and, by a little trickery, I got her outside. I cleaned up the kitchen with a broom and dustpan before taking care of other matters. Apparently, Roxy liked the kind of treatment she could get in her house, because she came back twice that same week. I began to feel like Robert, who told me once, girls take up too much of a person's time.